So, what is happening in Syria? There's a new violence between the Druze community and the Jolani government in Damascus, the so-called president, which used to be an Al-Qaeda leader. So, what is happening? What is this new cycle of violence? Let's find out. Hello everybody, my name is Stavros. I'm a professor of international relations and an advocate for democracy. This is Black Flag Media. We raise the black flag of independent journalism and analysis. So covering the news, we came upon this latest development in Syria, where we had a new cycle of war between the Druze community, another community which has been targeted by the ex-terrorists, now so-called politicians in Damascus. It's crazy that people actually talk to these men like they were not decapitating people a couple of years ago. This is really perplexing. And granted, the Gulf states, they're monarchies, dark states from the Dark Ages themselves. So they're ruthless. They kill people like Mr. Khashoggi, who was assassinated in Istanbul by the orders of the now leader, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. So they're obviously brutal dictators. But even President Trump acknowledged and accepted and supported this person called Ahmed al-Sara. The nom de guerre that he used was al-Jolani, who he was actually a terrorist in Al-Qaeda, an affiliate of ISIS in Syria, and now the so-called president of Syria, which is really, really crazy. And it should tell us a lot about not only the Gulf countries backing him, but also the money that led Trump to support this terrorist, this person who has been responsible for killing American troops. So it makes no sense for a U.S. president to acknowledge and accept and recognize him. Besides, if this president is getting paid by oil money and obviously, or crypto money, even better. So let's find out what is happening right now. So there is a new cycle of violence between the Jolani terrorists in Damascus and a minority, the Druze minority. This is a religious minority. They're an offshoot of Shia Islam, I would describe them. There's also other minorities in Syria that have been targeted by these terrorists, like the Alawite minority, also an offshoot of Shia Islam, and also there's Christians. Not only just Christians, but Greek Orthodox Christians in Syria, which are targeted because they're considered to be infidels. There was a recent attack in the Prophet Elias temple, church in Damascus, a bombing attack by a terrorist. So these people have been asking for help from Christians all across the world. Christians all across the world should help this Greek Eastern Orthodox Christian brothers and sisters in Syria, not only in Damascus. So they have been targeted as well. We had violence against the Alawites, violence against the Druze again, and now the Christians, obviously, and now again against the Druze community. In reality, though, the people responsible behind this cycle of violence was Turkey. So I want you to understand the situation right now is that al-Sara, the president, so-called president of Syria, ex-terrorist, I would say terrorist for life. The idea was that he will get money from the Gulf, and Trump will get money from the Gulf, and then these people would meet. They met in Riyadh, and the idea was that the West and the Gulf and Israel will recognize Jolani's government, al-Sara's government in Damascus, as long as al-Sara recognizes the state of Israel. This is a really big prize for Israel because it needs the recognition by the Arab states, obviously, especially the ones that are its neighbors. For many years, this has been the main goal of Israel. There is not even a peace deal between Israel and Syria since the first Arab war. So there's that. There's a de facto ceasefire, but there's no peace deal. And then also, besides the peace deal, the Israelis want this recognition by Damascus. So something that Trump initiated with the so-called Abraham Accords, where the UAE and Sudan, for instance, they recognized the Israeli government entity, as the Arabs used to call it. Now they say this is a government, we recognize it, and they exchanged diplomats and ambassadors. Now Trump wants to include Syria as well, Saudi Arabia as well, but mainly Syria to these extended Abraham Accords. Let's call them Abraham Accords Plus, right? This is the idea. So they were getting really, really close to make this happen, but at the same time, the Israelis, they started expanding inside Syria. So they took parts of the Golan Heights, which they illegally occupied, but they also started expanding inside Syria. They said that there's a minority of Druze in the southern part of the country, and that Damascus and Al-Sara should not mess with these people. These people should be in an autonomous condition, so they should be the ones governing themselves, and the government should not be in their area. This area is called Suwaida. So the Israelis are trying to create, like in essence, a buffer zone between them and what they consider to be a terrorist government in Damascus, which they need, though, to recognize Israel. But at the same time, they said that the Druze asked for our support, we'll support the Druze, and they were invested in the safety of the Druze community. Again, this is southern Syria. And they said that, the government in Damascus should not attack the Druze. They're under our protection. So with this situation, we have the emergence of a new power, which is called Turkey. So Turkey thought that they were really a key player behind toppling the ex-president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. The previous regime was toppled by al-Sara, backed by the Turks. The Turks were the ones paying for the jihadists and the terrorists and the criminals and the barbarians working with al-Sara. The Turks provided not only money and weapons, but also health support. They supported this regime clearly in every way that they could. And they thought that after they toppled Bashar al-Assad and they installed al-Sara as a puppet in Damascus, they would rule Syria by proxy. Well, guess what? The Turks realized that it wasn't just them supporting al-Sara, but it was also other patrons behind Sara, like the Gulf states, and also the CIA and Mossad. And guess what? These forces prevailed, and Turkey seemed to lose control over its puppet, al-Sara, in Damascus. So what the Turks tried to do, they tried to assassinate al-Sara. This was thwarted, obviously, by the foreign services, intelligence services of either, a Western state or even Mossad. Maybe they tipped the Syrians that an attack by Ankara was coming, and since this was not successful, the Turks, they found another way to do that, to stop this alignment between Israel and Damascus, and they thought that the Druze would be the target. So what they did is they pushed al-Sara to attack the Druze community, and they provoked the Israeli response to protect the Druze. And yes, that's exactly what happened. So the mercenaries, terrorists belonging to Damascus, attacked the Druze. Thankfully, the Druze had their own militias to protect themselves, and they managed to stay alive. It was a big play on behalf of Damascus. They thought that, if we manage to take over Suwaida, this area, this city, from the Druze, there's nothing that the Israelis can do if we de facto to cover it. But thankfully, the Druze had their own militias. They thwarted, they defended themselves, they rebuffed, they repelled the attacks, and then came the Israeli Defense Forces. Israel, because they were invested in the protection of the Druze, they had to maintain their credibility and legitimacy. So they had to attack in defense of the Druze, and they did attack. And they did bomb Syria, they did bomb Damascus, they also blew up the Ministry of Defense. So this is pretty big. Al-Sara reacted negatively to that. He said that the Israeli entity is sowing discord, destruction, and chaos in our country, and that things could have become really, really bad for everybody in the region. But thankfully, he said, the U.S., Arab nations, meaning the Gulf countries, and Turkey intervened. So things didn't escalate. So he, in essence, indirectly, he threatened Israel. He said also that, we're not the ones who would like to avoid fighting. So we'll be here again if something happens in the future. So it seems that there's not going to be a deal in the short term, at least, between al-Sara, Damascus, and Israel. So Turkey managed what they wanted to manage in the first place, to stop this entente, this approach between the two sides. But obviously, many people paid with their lives, especially the Jewish community. Any minority is paying when whatever happens in Syria, and obviously for the Turks, they're Sunni Muslims themselves. Jihadist state, I would call the state in Ankara. You know, the more minorities dead, the better in Syria for the Turks, especially you know, Druze, Shia, or even better for them, you know, Christians. If more Christians die, that's also a win for Turkey. You know, Turkey obviously has been destroying and dismantling Christian churches and monuments like the church in Hagia Sophia in Constantinople. All right, so this, I think this need to be explained, to analyze a bit, so you know what you're seeing, why things are happening in such a way in the Middle East. We'll be, you know, monitoring things to come, so make sure that you like and subscribe to this video, because there's going to be more videos coming down the loop. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. An interesting element here is the Kurds. The Kurds, they're their own minority inside Syria, in the northern eastern part of Syria, in a region which is called Rojava, and they want exactly that what the Druze have themselves. That's what the Kurds want. They want an autonomy inside Syria. So the Druze have that by the backing of Israel. The Kurds would like something similar. You know, maybe Israel provides that to the Kurds as well in the future. You know, let's take it one step at a time. That is why the foreign minister of Turkey, Fidan, who was to be a thug, who assassinating political opponents of Erdogan in Europe. So now he's a foreign minister. So he warned the Kurds in Syria. He said, you know, don't get any ideas. What the Druze have, you'll never have. But, you know, we'll see how that goes.